you donate money, how do you decide where to donate to and how much to give? Are you changing how you donate based on how the economy is changing or doing, or based on political forces or how women are being treated? Maybe the impact of AI is affecting how you give money. These are complicated issues, and impact philanthropy is going through a lot of changes. So today, I'm going to get some real answers from a master who is innovating new business models for philanthropy. Get that. So put on your earbuds or turn up the volume, grab a pen and pad or a tablet to take notes, and let's get started. Welcome to Electric Ladies Podcast. We share stories, insights, tips, and advice from remarkably innovative women working on the front lines of corporate responsibility, energy, sustainability, and climate-related issues. I'm your host, Joan Michelson. We talk about innovation, leadership, technologies, and careers, always bringing a new perspective. Find us anywhere you like to listen to podcasts on our website, electricladiespodcast.com, and through my articles as well, including many on Forbes. And please pass it on to your friends and leave us a 5-star review if you're so inclined. It helps other people find us. One more thing before we get started. If you are at an inflection point yourself, looking for support with your ESG work or your career, please reach out to me. In all the chaos around us, there is a lot of opportunity, and we don't want you to be flailing. Your talents are valuable. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn at Joan Michelson and let me know you're a listener. We can help you no matter what industry you're in. So philanthropy is going through a massive change. With all of the cuts from the government, with all of the shifting priorities, with all of the changes in the economy, and we'll talk about the great wealth transfer where women are getting, and Gen Z and millennials are getting literally trillions of dollars. There's a lot of change going on in the world of philanthropy. And we have impact investing, but we're talking to a lady today who is creating kind of a new business model for it that is, I'll let her explain it more, but is kind of a combination of impact investing and philanthropy all mushed together. It's very clever. So let's find out more. I'd like you to meet Amy Dornbusch. She's a philanthropic leader, an investor, hospitality entrepreneur, and all-around innovator whose passion for catalytic fundraising, get this, has generated nearly $75 million just in the past 5 years. I mean, that's extraordinary. Her work spans sustainable waste solutions, cancer research, and women's health, and children as well around the world and in the United States. For example, she miraculously, in my view, mobilized resources to evacuate Afghan women activists during the fall of Kabul in just days, bringing them to safety. She also mobilized resources for families displaced by the LA fires, again, like instantaneously. Amy has the talent to break down barriers, build collaborations, and make a bigger, more lasting impact. She recently founded Atlas Daughters to combine transformative travel, which we'll hear more about, bonding, and philanthropic education for mothers and children. It's such a cute concept. I love it. Previously, she had wine businesses, venture funds for early stage companies, among others. Amy earned her bachelor's and master's degrees at George Washington University, by the way, my alma mater, and has a certificate from Stanford in philanthropy and civil society. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Amy Dornbusch to Electric Ladies Podcast. Welcome, Amy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the beautiful introduction as well.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So tell me about the trends that you're seeing in philanthropy today. I threw some ideas out, but like give us an overview. What are you seeing about philanthropy right now?
Well, for one, women, right? We are at this incredible inflection point right now in terms of the not just the capacity to hold assets and the assets that we have, but also how we deploy them, right? And how we show up for each other. So I think just throwing women into the ring, it sounds so silly. I mean, it's literally half the population, but throwing women into the ring and giving them opportunities to roll their sleeves up and really be involved and direct where dollars are going is just a massive change in philanthropy. So that's the first thing. And I think that some of these other areas kind of reverberate and follow on the coattails of women leading the way. But, with younger people, and by younger, I would say, I guess, well, younger is always going to be me, right? Because I always want to think of myself as being young, but millennials and Gen Z, I mean, we're highly experiential, motivated generation. So we're kind of we're taking ourselves off of the paper, and how do we use this as a lived experience, and how do we use all the things that we do to enhance the lives that we're living. And so it kind of reverberates across everything that we're doing, but there's so many, and we can dig into this a little bit more because I've kind of created this entire model of how philanthropy is evolving. But I would say, women at the center is really changing the way that we do it. Trust-based philanthropy, so turning the philanthropic model upside down and putting trust in the people that are designing and developing and leading solutions with the people that and the populations that they're aiming to serve is a totally different way of doing things. And also just this idea of globalism, right? And global citizenship. I mean, when you think about the trajectory of philanthropy as a field or as something that we learn about and think about when people that we know, at least in our country, and by the way, America, holds the lion's share of all philanthropic capital across the world. So when I say we, I do mean, how do philanthropic models create and lead the way as they are here in the United States? What did that look like 100 years ago, and what does it look like today? And we just have this intensely focused lens on the world and globalism and global citizenship. These were not even terms that we even thought of before the 90s. So when we start to think about ourselves as belonging to this global community, then philanthropy as a field just changes drastically. And so we can go into any of those areas more deeply, but those are things that are that really define what's happening and what's changing in philanthropy.
Oh, that's perfect. So, how do women, you said that, putting money in the hands of women and they're deploying it differently. So, how do women do philanthropy? How do they deploy it differently? How do they look at it differently? Are there different values lenses that they look at? Do they do different types of investments, for example? How are women different than men when it comes to philanthropy?
How are women different than men in everything that we do? How do we do parenting differently? How do we manage households differently? How do we do travel differently? It's funny, my husband will go on a guy's trip and they'll be gone for 3 days, and then he'll come back and I'll say, well, what's going on in their life? Or what are they, what's happening in their career? I don't know. What's happening with their kids? I don't know. What did you talk about? What did you just spend the last 4 days doing? I mean, we're different creatures, right? We do things differently. I mean, we're transparent, we're emotional, we talk about things. We will analyze things until the death of analyzing that thing. We like doing things together, right? We're collaborative, we're social. We cannot live without our people, without our women, without our circles. And that's true with everything that we do, right? So philanthropy is not any different. I think that level of transparency and wanting to do things with other people, wanting to join, to find our people and to do things with them and to do it collaboratively. I mean, we're just more likely to form groups around the things that we do and to share power and to share ideas and to invest in things together. I think that shows itself in philanthropy just like it does in every other aspect of our lives. And so how that shows up in philanthropy is, as I was saying before, there's this incredible amount of trust that we put in other people. It's about relationship building, right? So historically women might have been called checkbook philanthropists, and I'm not trying to create a divide between men and women. I mean, I'm married and I love men just as much as I love women, and it's not about that. But I do think that historically women have been called checkbook philanthropists, and in a lot of ways, we're starting to see men kind of exhibit those characteristics more than women do, right? I mean, women are much more likely to build the relationships of people that are doing the work before they're likely to invest, right? They're much more likely to write bigger checks when they are doing it with other women. When we see that women that we love and respect and admire, who share values with the values that we hold in and of ourselves, write big checks because they believe in something, we're much more likely to do the same. We're much more likely to quote unquote invest, and forgive me because I've been chastised for this a lot, but I do use the word invest and investment when I'm talking about philanthropic investments. Some people get very thrown off on that, but I do use that word, so I'll try not to do that at the risk of confusing the audience. But when I think about projects that I want to put capital towards, I am much more likely to do it when it's de-risked by other women whose values are completely aligned with mine. And you mentioned the Afghan women's rescue mission that we did. We raised $7.5 million in 10 days to charter private planes and evacuate 1,100 women leaders in Afghanistan that were on the Taliban kill list. And 3 years later, we've still permanently relocated all but I believe 6 of those women and their family members. So I couldn't go to men and to more traditional sources of philanthropic capital to get that money. I went to women because women know what the stakes are. They understand what's at stake with these women losing their lives, and all of the women and girls that they were leading, and the various things that they were doing, which spanned a really wide, a broad spectrum of areas: academia, NGOs, medicine and research and government positions. So I have seen in a decade and a half that I've been doing this work, what happens when women come to the table and are willing to move capital. So lots of examples there, but it's just it's truly astonishing how catalytic female-driven capital can be.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah, your story about Afghan women is just unbelievable to me. Bring up, Amy, is it sounds like to me you're defining risk and reward differently. And I love that you use the word invest actually for philanthropy, because that's really what it is. It's just the return is different. The return is not looking for currency, it's looking for something else, right? So let's play with your image of using it, the word invest instead of philanthropy, or when referring to philanthropy. How do you define risk and how do you define reward then?
Well, I think it's interesting, this word of investment. As I mentioned, I've received a lot of pushback on using this word in the philanthropic space. Yet we have no problem using that word when we're talking about raising our children, right? We're investing in our children's future. I mean, why is that not, I don't know why that is okay to use it in that form. But I think, we're all looking for a return, right? So what is that return? Well, historically, when you use the word investment, you're thinking about obviously a financial return. And there can be a financial return with philanthropic investments. But the idea is that you're putting your capital into something and it's not blindly, right? You've done some due diligence, you've thought about it, and to what degree, there's varying degrees of how much diligence you put into that, but you make a decision and you have this wealth, and wealth is, money is one tool in our toolkit. We have lots of tools that we can utilize. And money is one of them, and it's not just the only one, and it's not the only one that's important, but we make decisions about where we're going to put that, and we don't want to just blindly write a check. We're looking for something. We want that money to be put to work and to build something that's greater than what it was when we invested in the beginning. And so with philanthropy, and I'll speak, personally for a moment, when I look at potential projects that we can put capital towards, I use that with the same lens as I would in making a venture investment in a startup business. And I think that I'm not the only one doing this. I mean, a lot of people are talking about this, and philanthropy is moving in this direction. We're thinking about, power dynamics and what is the return on investment and all of these sort of check boxes that we use if we were investing in a company. We have to use that same acumen and diligence when we're thinking about these projects that we want to move capital towards in the philanthropic space. So we're investing in the people. Who are they? What are their ideas? What is their background? Why are they uniquely situated to be deploying this capital? Why should they be leading the project? Is it sustainable long-term? And who are the stakeholders? And, if we're putting capital towards a project, we want to see it grow, but we also want to see it live on. We want it to be somewhere in 10 years from now. We don't want it to be gone, right? I mean, money has value to it, and no matter how much of it you have, it's important where it goes. You want it to feel good. You want it to feel like it's not just going to go down a drain. You're writing a check just out of the goodness of your heart, and you don't care what happens to it. So I think that, when we look at opportunities for moving our capital, we do have to put that lens of diligence on it. But on the other hand, we also need to flip upside down this traditional model of philanthropic power, which is, yesteryear, 100 years ago, or, during the Gilded Age of philanthropy, where those dollars were spent were primarily driven by the donor, right? I'm going to give you this check, but I want my name on the side of the building, or I want to build this thing, but it's only going to be for this population, and this population, libraries will not be accessible to this population. And now the where we're moving is this directional shift, which is really shepherded by women, is putting the trust in who's building the programs and who's on the ground. And I want to be involved, and I want to bring all the tools in my toolkit necessary to help scale this and to move this along. But I'm putting the trust in you because I believe in you. You're the entrepreneur, right? It was your idea, or you've been in the space for 20 years. I just learned about it last year. So clearly, you have such a depth of knowledge and deep issue area expertise that I do not. So I'm going to trust you to determine and identify the best ways to deploy the capital. And that I recognize that as being the best way to do things. And so I just bring a very sort of risk tolerant and venture minded approach to how we deploy capital in the philanthropic space. And perhaps I come with that perspective because I work in sort of a loosely defined family office where we all wear many hats, and I am in charge of deploying capital in the for-profit space in a more traditional kind of venture fund where we're investing for financial return, but I'm also in charge of running our foundation. So I don't silo those two things, and that's just where I come from. But I've recognized as we've gone along, and as I've evolved myself in the way that I do things, that we shouldn't be thinking about these things in silos, right? And that it's a healthy and natural place for those silos to be broken down first in a family office, because you have family office employees and family members that are involved in either the for-profit, preservation growth side of what you do with your assets, and also the philanthropy and foundation giveaway, moral obligation side of what we do with our capital. When you're in a family office, you kind of more often than not have the opportunity to kind of dip in both silos. And that's just where I come from. So I see how it works, and I believe in it, and I champion it. But others are going along, and this is, we're evolving into this direction. So it's good.
It makes sense because, you're not going to split your brain in half, right? I mean, it's that one informs the other. I mean, your venture investing probably has more of a value spin to it too, when your philanthropic giving has more of a return, although return is not just money, than one might think. But also, I mean, you're right. It's all about the team, and I love that you respect the experts, right? So many times people who want to write a big check, it's like they come in and they go, well, I built XYZ business, so I know how to run yours too. And it's like, yeah, no, like, no, you're not an expert in children's health. You're not an expert in whatever, right? Steve Ballmer put a lot of his money into USA Facts, which is great, but he has a team that he trusts to collect all the information from the government sources and organize it. And obviously it's a technology based business, but you've got to trust the people that you're investing in. It is an investment. It's 100% an investment. So are you finding that the like, what are the priorities that women do focus on when it comes to money in general? Let's kind of go over the top of traditional venture or whatever, regular investing in philanthropy. Do you find that women are leaning towards putting any kind of money towards certain things and looking at, are there lenses that you kind of touched on this a little bit about women being different than men, but those were how they do it. What I'm talking about is what's behind that? Like, are they looking more at environment stuff? Are they looking more at children's stuff? Are they looking at, like, what are the priorities that they generally focus on topic wise?
Honestly, I really can't generalize what that would be. What I would say is, because women, like men, I mean, what we're interested in, whether it's philanthropy or our careers or what we focus our hobbies on, I mean, life informs who we evolve to be as people. So the answer is women are interested in everything, just like men are interested in everything. But what I will say is, over the past decade and a half of myself doing this work, when I started in the philanthropy field and going to all of these forums of, collective women's philanthropic communities and thought leadership forums and philanthropy conferences and, papers and all of these things, I mean, just general conversation in the field. I would say 15 years ago, women and girls were a giving area, right? So, we give in music and arts, and we care about disease research, and we care about community hospitals, and we care about women and girls. And that was an issue area that people would invest in or philanthropically contribute to, right? Women and girls. Whereas now, women and girls is just a lens. It's just a giving lens through which we give. So we care about music and arts and disease research and community hospitals, but we care about looking at these areas of giving and philanthropic opportunity through the lens of women and girls. So I'm interested in disease research, but let's look at Alzheimer's, right? Alzheimer's as a field, we have so much more to invest in. I mean, we're just at the tip of the iceberg in terms of where we need to go. And this is going to be a public health crisis. In the next 10 years, it's like not enough people are talking about what's going to happen when the boomers and the silent generation are really start, moving into these memory disorders. And we're just going to have, anyway, it's going to be a disaster. But when we look at those fields and Alzheimer's, for example, 2/3 of all diagnoses in Alzheimer's is in women. So how much of that field, that I think it's $2 billion, don't quote me on that, of investment in Alzheimer's, which is really not that much, is dedicated towards looking specifically at prevention and outcomes and treatments for women who represent 2/3 of that particular disease. You go into every single one of these areas that you care about, and you will find that there is an enormous amount of opportunity to invest in gender equity at the intersection of fill in the blank here, whatever it is that you care about. So that's a change that I've seen, in the last 15 years. And I think that will continue to evolve as you start to get more women funders behind these issues. Great. My family's always cared about X, Y, and Z. But now let's look at, how does that affect women and girls? How does that affect disabled populations? How does that affect specifically, certain racial populations? I mean, we're looking at that a lot in health outcomes. I mean, how do we look at things like cancer research and, proportion or create opportunities for investment that are specifically looking at racial and gender disparities within, the cancer research space, which I've been very involved with over the last 10 years as well. So I think that as more women come to the table, you're going to start to see more of these lenses applied to the things that they've cared about, perhaps for generations. If they have a family foundation that, what the wealth creator was 3 or 4 generations ago, well, we can still carry on the legacy of the wealth creator if that's what's important to the family. But let's also look at it through a gender lens, and how might that impact the areas that we're funding.
I love that. That's great. And also, to that point, women and Gen Z millennials, but are creating their own wealth now too. I mean, I've talked to some folks who say, well, when I butt heads with my family foundation people who say, well, that's not how this family does things. I turn around, and these people have said to me and say, well, that's fine, but it's a new day in the neighborhood and we're doing things through this other lens. And oh, by the way, we have our own money too. It's not just what's in the family pot that we feel an obligation to pass along and really be stewards of. Is the difference between being stewards of it for the next generation and investing it for the future, right? More broadly. Kind of align with that. I don't know if you know Ida Louie, but she's great. I interviewed her for my book. And when she ran Citibank, she's now at HSBC, but when she ran Citibank Private Bank, she said, quote, historically, many women have faced systemic and societal barriers that contributed to delayed or more conservative investing behaviors, from wage disparities and career interruptions to a lack of representation in the financial industry. These challenges have understandably shaped how women engage with wealth, which is a really interesting framing, right? Do you see that how women have been treated and how women have been paid, but not just paid, but recognized when it comes to the way currency and wealth moves through society? Do you see that that has affected how women work with wealth when they have it now? That makes sense.
Yes, I would say so. I heard her speak actually at Davos last year, and she shared a statistic which I'm going to butcher, so I don't even want to say the numbers, but I have to say some number so that it has effect, and I'm going to get it wrong. But something like 90% of women, when they experience a wealth event, a liquidity event, or they become widowed or inherit, or they make their own money, or whatever it is, but they experience a significant wealth event, will change their wealth advisors within the first 90 days, right? She said something to that effect. And it stood,
by the way. It's
what
70%.
was it? Okay, 70%. Thank you. But it is within the first 90 days
Crazy.
Or 3 months or something. And so, by the way, everyone in the financial institution world is trying to figure this out right now, right? Because women stand to inherit more than $30 trillion in the next 4 years or something. So if you can't figure out how to reach women and develop practices and products and methods of communication that reach your female client, then you're screwed. So everyone's running around trying to figure this out right now. But I think that, it's really interesting. And going back to what I was saying before, well, first of all, that statistic in and of itself tells you something about the way that women feel that they're treated, the way that they feel with the relationships that they have with the people that stand closest to them and their financial assets, which most likely is their financial advisor outside of their family members. And if that relationship was established by a male partner or a father, or even a family foundation or a family office, it may have been established most likely by a male before the woman comes into her own. Women just want to create a clean slate, right? Okay, So here I am, this is who I am, this is what's important to me, and here are my assets. Let's figure out how we can align all of the things that we use our assets for, not just investments, but so the investments is sort of the preservation and growth side of what we do with our wealth, but there's also philanthropy, and that's what we do with our wealth. And then there's the, enhancement and life experiences and raising our kids and, spending, if you will, right? And so if you truly align your values with your wealth, the new philanthropy, which is what I would call the new philanthropy or female-driven philanthropy, and I'm picturing a Venn diagram, is at the intersection of all of those things, right? So they're not siloed, but how do we, this is, I would say certain banks have done better at this than others, but when you lead with your values first and the financial returns second, you really understand, like, what is it that you want to impart with your values and your wealth, because you can't take it all with you when you're gone, right? And then you sort of build these practices around it. That's when it becomes really personal and really meaningful. And I think that's all. You can also stop feeling embarrassed about being a person that has wealth or a person that has assets, because you can honestly say, when I invest, when I give with my philanthropy, when I spend, how I raise my kids, I can honestly say truthfully that I'm aligning my wealth with all of my values. I don't have anything to hide behind, right? And even if there's some finer things that come along with that, it's okay. And I think that, women are just uniquely positioned to be able to lead in that way. And then the other thing that I'll just mention is something that I mentioned before, which is that when you're in an ecosystem that's, primarily and historically been driven by the male ethos, that is where this de-risking element comes in. When you can join other women and say, I'm feeling a little bit weird, or I belong to these philanthropic women's communities, and we all get together, and like the number one thing that we always come back to is like, how do we raise grounded children with assets and with wealth? And it always comes back to that when you have young kids, because that is what we care about, right? But we also we want to know what other women think, and we're transparent. We want to do it around a dinner table and have conversations. And when you have conversations and do it with other women, that's when, no matter what you're talking about, it does automatically come with this like idea of de-risking. So that's different.
No, totally agree. I actually had somebody tell me that they saw a presentation at Davos that women have become, and I've also seen conflicting research on this as well, but they saw research that women are not embracing AI as much as men, because women have been so harassed by technologies, or by the people using technologies badly against them, like, stealing pictures and making you naked, or harassment and things like that many women have been reluctant. And so it's how you are treated affects how you work with whatever that tool is, right? And also, frankly, women have historically been paid less than men, and so they're going to be looking at money a little differently, and they live longer than men. So the lens is naturally going to be different. If you're even when you're coming from wealth, you still have that experience in the back of your head, and you see what other people have gone through, and you see the reports of women earning, between 70 and 80 cents on a dollar. I think it's up to 84 cents on the dollar now. It's just insane, depending upon the industry, of course. So thank you for that.
One thing that I will
Yeah,
say about that, because I've been thinking a lot about this, and obviously AI is starting to dominate our everyday lives and all these things. I think that, a couple of things. First of all, AI thrives on data sets. It's the only way that it works, right? It has to pull from information. So you can't ignore it. You can't not participate. This is a runaway train. So AI is going to become, and has the power to become, the greatest democratizer that we have ever seen, or the greatest display of colonization that we have ever seen. And which side of history do you want to be on? Are you going to participate, or are you not going to participate? Because we have to feed it all the information so that it can become the greatest democratizer that we've ever seen. And we have to do that. It's obligatory. And so I think that, but this also plays into this idea of transparency. I mean, women's sports, the salaries of women's sports have just increased, 4x or something in the last 12 months. And the greatest, the greatest growth and evolution of salaries in any industry that we've ever seen. And it's because of transparency, because women are transparent. They talk, they share things. That is what AI is doing, and we can't not participate, because if we do participate, then we're going to see that. I mean, my hope as AI becoming potentially the greatest democratizer we've ever seen, that we'll see these disparities close in a shorter gap than we've ever seen. So you can't ignore it. You have to participate.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I have some friends who say, put your stuff in it so that we feed in good data. Don't let it
Yes.
only get bad data. Keep feeding
Yes.
it good data, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm writing a book on the Great Wealth Transfer, and which is how you and I connected initially. But I'm curious how you think the Great Wealth Transfer will affect the economy. What impact do you think it might have when we suddenly have, and it's a total of 124 trillion between now and 2050, to the point where by 2048 it's predicted that women will control 50% of all global wealth for the first time ever in history. And that's going to have an impact. I mean, I can't imagine that doesn't have an impact. But I'm curious what you think, what you see. How do you see, like, extrapolate, right? If women have that much more control over that much more wealth, how does that, in your mind, trickle through the economy? How does that show up? How does that change businesses, sectors, what have you? What do you think?
Well, I mean, female participation across every sector is going to increase naturally, right? I mean, I think that women are equalizers, and we will seek, positions of power and well, I shouldn't say positions of power, positions of leadership, not just in women, but all disenfranchised populations, right? I mean, it's remarkable to think about how little time has passed since women didn't have the vote and couldn't open a credit card. I mean, this happened in my mom's lifetime, that she couldn't open a credit card or a mortgage without my dad's signature. But these things are going to rapidly disintegrate. At least I'm an optimist, so I think that we will start to see a lot of these pain points disappear, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I think that it's accountability. We're going to have accountability for everything, right? Businesses will have to have accountability. ESG, investing. I mean, the ESG lens has become something. 97% of all millennials require sort of ESG due diligence checkboxes when they're making investments. Women and young people, across both genders demand that type of accountability. So I think even just living through the Me Too movement and some of these other things, that accountability and transparency will be prevalent in everything that we see. And I think that's all going to be for the good. So, I don't think people should be afraid of feminist thinking, feminist philanthropy, feminist investing. I mean, it's historically been kind of a dirty word, but it's not a dirty word. I mean, it's just it's equalizing, right? And I think that's important, because all of the things that make society work and will be more inclusive and will be better for everyone. So naturally, that's going to have a huge impact on the economy. And starting with impact investing and ESG, I mean, this is. Investors and wealth owners are going to demand that type of accountability and transparency from companies, and that's really just starting to evolve now. So I can only imagine what it's going to be, but that's all for the good. But we also have to be realistic, right? We have to be realistic about what's possible and what makes the the world go round. And so, yeah, I think it's exciting, but, related to what I do and what my social enterprise is all about, women naturally are, care so much about their families, and we're the glue between our families and our communities. And so naturally, all the things that we do, whether it's running a household or making decisions in a leadership position for our communities, investing in companies, or directing philanthropic capital, I don't think we'll be able to do that without our partners and without our children and our kids and our friends. I mean, we're just naturally so inclusive. So I think we're just going to see a lot less like unilateral decision making. And to me, that feels like the old way of doing things is this like unilateral approach. And the new way of doing things is more collaborative, and it's more about matchmaking. And by matchmaking, I mean, we want to invest in projects and companies and charities and all of these things. We want to do it when we found our people, right? Because it only feels good if it's values aligned, right? You can't just look at metrics anymore and say, well, is that going to deliver me a good financial return? It's like, are you my people? Because you can put your money in, there's no shortage of companies to invest in, or stocks to buy, or philanthropic projects or causes to care about. There's no shortage of any of those things. So you have to find your people, because that's what feels really good. And that's what's going to make all of these, the movement of capital more meaningful to us all. So that's a big thing. I say that a lot. I got to find my people. Are you my people?
Yeah, we have to want to hang out with those people, right? It's not just a matter of giving them money. I mean, you want to be involved. And are these the kind of people that I want to spend time with? I had somebody say to me, um, one of the factors when I'm at the final stage of deciding, I can't remember if it's the final or the beginning, frankly, whether to invest in a company, I think about whether I would want one of my kids to work there.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's a great
Yeah.
image, isn't it? It's perfect. It's like they just
Would you have
encapsulates.
them over for dinner?
I know,
Yeah.
like do I want to go on a hike with these people? Do I want to hang out with these people? I
Yes.
want to hear about Atlas Daughters in a second, but since we're on the topic, do you think the great wealth transfer is going to women, but also Gen Z and millennials, and obviously that's your population as well. You overlap all of these. Do you think that Gen Z and millennials see money and wealth the same way as women, or are there differences, or what impact might their involvement have in how this plays out throughout the economy?
Well, you have to look at them separately, otherwise it's just noisy data. So I think, or anecdotes, as you're asking me for. I think that, every generation. You asked me a question. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and you asked me a question about what impact is the great wealth transfer going to have, in 100 years from now or generations from now? And the answer is, I don't know. None of us know, right? I mean, every generation has its own ecosystem in which it evolved and grew up in. And you talk a lot about, kids and about this moral imprinting period that our kids are in. Nothing exists in silos. So whatever's happening in politics and the global economy and what's considered to be status quo or MO for parenting and how families operate, family size. When you have kids, I mean, what's happening in business, and you can't divorce any one of those things from the other. And so every generation will have its own ethos, generally speaking. Obviously, we're all individuals. I mean, we're not zombies walking around, like we all have the same viewpoint, but we do grow up and come of age, and we're formed by what's happening around us. And every generation will have a different, my mother-in-law was, raised a typical Jewish mother, was raised by boomers, and this world that she grew up in. I mean, she was born in the 40s, and like she'll come over and bring us like 5 things of toilet paper because she's worried we're going to run out, and I'm just like, I'm a 42-year-old woman. I can buy toilet paper for my household, thank you very much. But it's funny because we all come of age and sort of develop the way that we are in different times. So I don't know what it's going to be like later, but I do know that our kids, and I have 3 kids that are under the age of 10, are growing up in a world where humans are never going to be smarter than computers. They're just not going to, they're not even going to have that in their cultural awareness. They grew up on screens, the generation above them grew up on screens. I still remember waiting for that dial-up modem to connect me to the internet. It took 6 minutes, right? Now it's like, if AI can't generate something within 13 seconds, I'm annoyed, we're just growing up in different worlds. And so I don't have a crystal ball, and none of us do, but I think that what's really important to Gen Z and millennials is highly driven by experiences, right? It's like there's this whole idea of like, when is enough enough? People they're buying homes later, if they ever buy homes at all. I mean, they're willing to spend money on trips and experiences and things that they're going to remember forever versus things, and you think about like the nuclear family, and it was all about the things. Like, you had to have the house, and you had to have the cars, and your kids had to go to a 4-year college, and these were check boxes that needed to be filled. And I feel like, from my lived experience and my anecdotes, and also what the data suggests, is that these populations and generations don't live by the check boxes, right? They want to feel alive. They want to feel like they're living, and they're experiencing, and they're meeting people, and they're, in some ways they have longer than they ever have before. I just wrote this op-ed about this old adage that we all hear, like, oh, children are just growing up too fast these days. But in fact, everybody says that, right? They said it 2 generations ago, and they're saying it today. And I just think, the opposite is true. Our kids are growing up with more time now than they have ever had. I mean, a 13-year-old girl, especially today, has 7 decades of her life ahead of her. She may have 15 years of education ahead of her. That same 13-year-old girl 100 years ago had maybe 4 decades ahead of her. She may have been nearing the end of her educational, time. She may have been gearing up for, what was expected of her, to become a wife and a mother and to raise kids. The 13-year-old today has, could have 20 stamps in their passport, and the 13-year-old 100 years ago never would have left their hometown. So our kids, we have so much time to shape who we are and what's important to us. And that is, and that combined with like the efficiency of AI and how that's going to change the educational environment, all these things, we're going to become so efficient that we're going to have just so much time to like build those relationships and to think about what we want to do with our assets and with our life. And we have so much time to align all the things that we do with our time, with our relationships, with our money, to align those things with our values. And we have more time than ever to figure out what our values are. And it's amazing. I mean, it's beautiful. I'm an optimist, not everyone is like me, but I just think I'm excited about the future for myself. I'm excited about the future for my kids. And it's just, that's the world that we're living in now anyway.
Oh, I love that. What you remind me of is like the silent generation and baby boomers grew up with World War II and the Depression, and that's why she's coming in with toilet paper and
Yes.
and Vietnam, right, and the 60s, and then other generations had obviously this generation has AI, although we all do in some ways, but also gun violence. Right. I mean, there's a whole generation, was the first generation that always had active shooter drills in school. Right. Yeah. And things like that. So it's, but years ago, retirement came into view, and this, talking about experiences, retirement came into view because people had jobs that they didn't really like. And so they looked forward to retiring and then being who they wanted to be. Whereas our generations, if I may be so old, really want to be who we are along the way. We're not going to wait to retire, quote unquote. And of course, retirement's getting completely reframed altogether. somebody called it rewirement, which I thought was great. Um,
I love
and
it.
we want to have those experiences along the way. We don't want to wait to be who we are. We don't want to wait to have the experiences that we want to have. We want to do it now. And I mean, I have clients who built companies or had jobs in the financial sector, or other sectors, and said, I want to go travel. So they sold everything and traveled for 2 years, right? And then came back and did whatever, and now living nomadic again. And it's like, whatever we want to do, right? It's a different frame of it's a different way of looking at creating a life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
there was a question there. I have so much to say on this topic, but I'll wait for your
No,
question.
I know, I love it. I could talk to you forever. But I want to hear about, I mean, this all ties in really beautifully with Atlas Daughters. So let's talk about Atlas Daughters, because it ties in, well, you can explain, but because you're living what you talk about. You're bringing kids and moms together. And this is what I love about Atlas Daughters, from what I know of it anyway. And maybe one of these days you'll let this woman who does not have children go along on one of your trips.
Of
But
course.
you're combining, it's like, it seems to me to be like Amy squared, right? It's like the innovation of philanthropy and investing, and the innovation of different generations, and the innovation of purpose and globalization, all mixed together in one bowl. So explain what it is, and yeah, tell the audience about how you came up with it.
Sure. So, I mean, you've heard a little bit about the things that I care about and kind of where I come from in terms of the different things that I've done. But ultimately, I moved into a position of leadership in my family's foundation at the same time that I was having children. And for me, what what has become a profound meaning in my life, at least at this stage that I'm in right now, is about breaking down the silos, right? I learned and threw myself into family foundation work and philanthropic work. And you mentioned in my intro that I've had, over a decade, almost 2 decades of experience in hospitality. And I'm also a mom. So I care deeply about philanthropy and about global impact. I care deeply about doing things as a family. I do not believe that our love for adventure and for travel and for fun and for doing good in this world and scaling impactful projects that are going to make a really big difference in certain areas of giving and parenting and spending time with my kids. I don't believe any of those things should exist in silos. And so I just don't. And Atlas Daughters is a social venture that I launched a year ago. And the focus and the sole, well, there's actually 3 real objectives for Atlas Daughters. But what we do is we create incredibly experiential, immersive experiences that are related to travel. So travel experiences for mothers, female funders and their children, or grandmothers and mothers and their children and grandchildren, to go and participate in incredibly impactful work that NGOs are doing, specific, tangible projects that are worthy of investment and ripe for scale. We bring families to those projects. So this is an evolution of learning journeys or donor trips or, what have you, where you basically go and see this work firsthand. And the objective is threefold for these experiences. The first and foremost is that our objective is to move capital into these projects. So we identify NGOs that have these incredible projects that are worthy of investment, and they may have very small teams. So a lot of international organizations have very small teams. They don't have PR companies and marketing teams and lots of development people. They may be a team of 4, but they may have a very efficient and effective project that they've developed that has the potential to really change millions of lives or to make a huge impact on sustainability or biodiversity or, any of climate related or health related issues. And one of the ways that the thing that is most effective in unlocking big checks of capital for NGOs are donor journeys, getting people to the site, building relationships with the country directors, meeting the stakeholders in the government that are signed on for this project, really understanding what's happening here, who's leading the projects, why is it something that I should invest in, making those relationships. That's what women do, right? That's what we do best. Those are the most impactful ways for organizations to unlock capital. So the first objective is really to move capital, right? The second objective is that we create these intense bonds, these opportunities for unforgettable lifetime memories that families will never forget, that bring them closer. In the last chapter of Philanthropy and Wealth was a dirty word, I remember specifically when my dad was a wealth creator in my family. Mostly we generated wealth during the boom of the internet boom in Silicon Valley in the 2000s. I remember my mom got a nice car and I was so embarrassed by it. I made her drop me off, 4 blocks away from school. I didn't want anyone to see me get dropped off in this car. I was so embarrassed. And today, I think, like, going back to what I was saying, if you align all of your values with your wealth, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. I mean, it's like, this is, someone in our family, myself or somebody else, did something to amass wealth, and look at what it's allowing us to do. I mean, we can now do these incredible things that are going to make impact. And that's not the only tool that we have, but it is a tool that some people have. And so those some people need to, invest in these projects. And so, this is sort of an evolution of Jay Shetty's work, but I don't know if you've heard of like the bonding ladders, but he's talked about these bonding ladders and what I consider to be the 4 E's. And this goes back to one of the things that you were saying just a few minutes ago about how we think about our life stages. So traditionally we have these 4 E's, okay? Education, entertainment, experiences, and engagement. And we tend to think about these things as activities that we would engage in throughout our life in linear order. So the childhood, our childhood, that time, your job was during that time is to be educated. You go to school, it's about learning, right? So we have to learn the tools, we become educated. Then we get into our young adulthood, and it's all about entertainment, right? You want to go out, you want to have fun, you want to go drink with your friends, you want to go to a comedy club, you want to just, be young in a new city or on a new college campus or something. And hopefully, so not everybody is fortunate to be able to live that stage of life, but, a lot of people do. And that's something that's generally considered to happen after this educational period of time. Then you get into your 30s and 40s and it's all about experiences. It's like maybe now you're raising your kids and you have a home and maybe you have a little bit of disposable income. So you get to go, on a trip, you get to go camping or backpacking through, Europe, or maybe you just, for the first time, you want to celebrate your 40th birthday with friends and you want to go on a weekend trip or something. It's all about like soaking in these experiences. And then engagement or civic engagement or philanthropy, giving back. You've amassed all of this experiential, capital, and now it's and maybe you have some income to give back or other things, but you have something to give back, right? You're gonna be a mentor. You're gonna give back in philanthropy. You're gonna tutor. You're gonna just become an elder at your church or something along those lines. That type of engagement has historically been considered something that we do at the end of our life. So again, another Venn diagram for me, right? Like if you're in the middle, if you take the intersection of engagement, starting with education, right? So you're learning something together. Like this is new. It's not my parents are teaching me about something. We're learning something new together and I'm 6, right? Entertainment. We're going to go have some fun. We're going to travel. We're going to do something that we'll remember forever and have fun and have that kind of like unadulterated, just joy together, joyful moments. Experiences, those are things that I'm never going to forget this, right? We went to some far off geography and we got stuck in I remember when I was with my family, we lived in Australia for a short period of time when I was 6, and we went to the zoo and we got stuck in this torrential downpour and it just wouldn't let up. And so we got stuck like habituating in the platypus, like building, and all we had was like me and my parents and my brother, and it was flooding and this platypus tank, and we were just stuck there for hours. And it was like, I will never forget that. I was 6. It was an experience that we had. And then the engagement is what we're going to do together as a family. So when you combine all 4 of these things together intergenerationally, it's a tool. Wealth becomes a tool for family bonding and engagement in the way that we've never seen it before. And so Atlas Daughters delivers on that, objective. And that's really what it's all about. And so the first objective is moving capital, investing in these projects. The second is using these experiences to build and cement family bonds and relationships that can't be done in other everyday circumstances. And then the third is that we have to teach our kids about philanthropy. We have to teach our kids about global impact. So what we do with Atlas Daughters is we created a curriculum around global impact and what the role is of the individual. Yes, a 6-year-old has a role to play here, right? I mean, my daughter's learning, it's April 1st, but we learned about, Women's History Month, and she was learning about, Anne Frank. And it's like, here's this 11-year-old girl that has, for like till the end of history, will play this like enormous role in global history. And she had a role. So kids have a role. The Family Foundation has a role. But then also, where do NGOs come, and corporations, and the government, and the role of United Nations, and all of these things. So we teach a curriculum to kids so that they can have a seat at the table at global impact and understand what philanthropy is all about in a pretty educated way. So, and that's the third piece that we bring. So it's beautiful, and I could go on, but I'll stop there. I'm sure you have some other things to put in there, but it's, and of course it's selfishly motivated because I get to do all these trips, with my kids, and my family foundation and myself, we're always the first check in because I believe in peer driven philanthropy. So we're also investing in all of these projects.
Yeah, I bet. That's beautiful. Well, what comes to mind is what you're also teaching them is a key word that you haven't used, which is curiosity. You're amping up curiosity. I mean, I think all the leaders that I talk to, and the hundreds and hundreds of people I've had on my show and used in stories and through my business work is, they looking to hire people who are adaptable, flexible, curious. There are skills you can teach, but you can't teach initiative. You can't teach curiosity. You can't teach um, cultural awareness. You can teach a little bit of cultural awareness, but not. I mean, it's a different thing. When you grow up going to Rwanda or going, I mean, what you don't know is I'm staring at a wall of pictures from my safari in Tanzania. When take kids to Tanzania, when you take kids to like Princess Diana took Harry and William to AIDS clinics in Africa, whatever, um, that that touches them on a whole different level, and it informs their sense of the world on a whole different level, and it makes them naturally, I think, also a more authentic person. So I can see how, especially kids who are uh, privileged enough to be born into wealth, that they can feel like there's something that they have to live up to. But when you take them out of their little comfort zone and out of their privileged world, to be blunt about it, and put them in some of these NGOs in different countries, I imagine you're also teaching them how to just be, about just authenticity, and that it's about just touching your soul and being curious about the world, and that has a whole different, that just changes who you are completely. I've lived in 8 different states. I've born in New York City in different environments. So I think that that's really made, and traveled the world quite a bit. It makes a huge difference on who people become and what they do with who they become. What kinds of talents they develop, and what they want to do. One of the things that you've said that's underneath a lot of what you've said is using money as a tool, but also using your talents and who you are as a tool. to make a difference in the world in the way you want to make a difference. Does that resonate with you? Does that sound like what you're talking about?
100%. And I would also say that, privilege it's a loaded word and it can mean a lot of different things. And of course, it's a privilege to be born into wealth, but regardless of your politics, it's a privilege to live in America. It's a privilege to be born here because you don't have to be born here, but it's a privilege to be here because we're surrounded by so many people that represent different cultures and that speak different languages and that bring their cultures and the best of what they can from other parts of the world to right here. So even if you can't travel, I mean, I just think that we talk about this with our kids all the time, but you don't have to have money to travel to experience those kinds of things. I mean, to really have this global mindset of the fact that you're born into this world, which is becoming increasingly a smaller place, it's not a stretch to impart on the next generation why caring for the preservation of clean water in Ecuador matters to you when you live in California. I think that, and I hinted at this a little bit in the beginning of the podcast, but this topic of global citizenship and global impact and also, I mean, to some extent, we never even heard of those terms until before the AIDS crisis in the 1990s, right? Like, if you were a philanthropist in the 1930s, the last thing you would be thinking about investing in was something outside of the community in which you were born in, right? And so that in and of itself is a privilege. I mean, just to be connected, and we just can't let that go to waste. But also, we have to milk the opportunities to dig into it even deeper before our kids develop a sense of who they're going to be and what they're interested in. And like we were talking about in the beginning, it's a lens, right? It's not a giving area, it's a lens. So whether your kid wants to be, I joked about my first job as a project manager, and I'm like, this is funny because like no kid ever wants to be project manager when they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up, But whatever it is that they want to be, whether it's a musician or I want to create a vaccination I want to find the end of cancer, or I just want to be an entertainer, or I want to be a writer, or I want to be a social worker. Whatever it is that they decide that they want to be, let's make sure that during that moral imprinting period, they have exposure, because the difference between today and 100 years ago is that exposure is what drives philanthropic decisions and what drives global impact. So 100 years ago, you would have given to your hospital in your town, your alma mater, maybe your church or something else like that. But it would have been in your community, and it would have been driven by your experience. The same is true today, but the experience that we can now give our kids is global. So let's shape their lens to understand, hey, here are the 17 SDGs. These are the things that basically every country in the world agrees upon are issues that we have to solve for in our time. I just want you to know about them. You don't have to solve them, but maybe some of these might be interesting to you. And whatever it is that you want to go into, whether it's music, seemingly has nothing to do with climate, like you can use that to affect what it is that you care the most about. In fact, my boarding school roommate is a Colombian. She lives in Bogota, and she loves music and she loves sustainability. And there are so many women and indigenous people in Colombia that are focused on biodiversity and conservation and storytelling about sustainability and why this part of the world is so important for these issues. And because she loves music and she comes from a media family, she's developed a music festival that is it's famous across the country. In Colombia, they get all these big acts and everything. And she uses the music festival as a platform to drive engagement in issues of sustainability. That is what our kids will do with exposure, and that is why it is so important. And that is why I am doing this right now.
Yeah, it's great. And that's where you talk about the moral imprinting, right? It's perfect. Well, I could talk to you for about a week nonstop, just kind of saying. And one of these days we'll meet in person to try to continue the conversation. But before I let you go, I do like to get career advice for mid-career women. So think about a woman who has at least 10 years of experience, maybe more, who has an education, who knows what she's good at, has experience, wants to advance, wants to make money, wants to advance her career, and wants to make a difference. And she doesn't feel that there should be a trade off. So, what advice would you give to her?
Well, first of all, you can Google this, and for people that are on social media, I'm sure you've seen lots of memes about this, but almost everyone who's made something of themselves, you know, is known in their areas for being successful, started their career basically after the age of 40, right? So if we're talking about women, we're talking about Julia Child, we're talking about Toni Morrison, Isabel Allende, who's the most translated, we were talking about that at the beginning of this call. Isabel Allende is the most translated Spanish speaking author of all time. And she's sold 75 million copies of her book. She's been translated into 42 languages. Her first and most famous book that she's famous for, House of the Spirits, was published when she was 40. Diane von Furstenberg, Michelle Obama, Julia Child, I think, Laura Ingalls Wilder. These are all people who have started their careers after the age of 40. So like, don't be discouraged, like if you're going to start something. And then, we were talking about earlier as well, finding your people. Don't be discouraged by the people that are not your people. Don't seek, what's the word I'm looking for? Like validation. Don't seek validation from people whose values are different than yours. Right? Seek validation in the people whose values are aligned with yours and who you look up to. Those are your people, and find your people, because your people will encourage you in every way possible. And, I also believe that second acts are often more impactful than the first acts. So when you get to this stage in life and you combine your life experience with your networks, your resources, and your perspective, the amount of impact that you can have later in life will be exponential. So I just feel like I'm just getting started. And I think most middle-aged women should feel that they're just getting started.
Oh, I love that. That's perfect. And I love what you said about don't seek validation from people whose values are different from yours. There's so much in that we could talk about for an hour alone. But that's just one of the most important things that anyone has ever said. Really, really important. So, thank you so much, Amy, for being you, for doing what you do, for your incredible enthusiasm as well for what you do. Are there any final thoughts before I let you get back to your three small humans and all your amazing work?
Just find your people. I keep saying that, but it really is, and you'll know. I think that the truth and the validation and the excitement and that drive, it becomes self-evident when you surround yourself with your people. So put energy into that, because it will deliver the ultimate ROI.
It'll pay dividends, won't it? Yes. So thank you. That's perfect. So and I like to think that you're part of my people. So there you go.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today on Electric Ladies Podcast, Amy Marks Dornbusch. I'm so excited. So, how will you change how and when you donate money and your time? What did Amy say that resonated with you? Are you ready to go on a trip with Atlas Daughters? Let us know. Post it to us on LinkedIn at Joan Michelson. Send us any questions there as well. Tell us you're a listener of Electric Ladies Podcast too, and you may win a complimentary 30-minute session with me. I've met some fabulous people that way. And please subscribe to our mailing list to stay abreast of our amazing guests like Amy, our articles and career advice. And you can subscribe on electricladiespodcast.com. Please remember that you are talented. Your ambition is a gift. Seize the opportunities that abound even now in this crazy economy, in the intersection of innovation, energy, climate, and sustainability. And as Amy has said, find your people. I'm Joan Michelson. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.